Nancy Pelosi says it's perhaps time to consider universal basic income pushed by Andrew Yang during his failed presidential campaign. A very, very interesting story. Nancy Pelosi expressed a willingness to look into instituting a universal basic income for the American people, which was the centerpiece of Democrat Andrew Yang's presidential campaign. Pelosi pointed out Monday on MSNBC that others have suggested a minimum income, a guaranteed income for people. Is that worthy of attention now? Perhaps so. Congress already passed one bill to combat the economic fallout of the coronavirus pandemic that included cash payments to Americans. I am a UBI skeptic. What I should say in that regard is that I don't completely discredit universal basic income. I actually love the idea. When I was younger, I was very, very much into the idea of UBI. As I've gotten older and I've learned more about economics, I've become much, much more of a skeptic. You may have seen recently I appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast, and we brought this up. Well, over on a subreddit for Andrew Yang, they mention this, and they're having a discussion about what I got wrong and how they view UBI, and I would actually like to take the opportunity to address some of their comments and have a legitimate conversation about UBI, because there isn't one set defined universal basic income, and there are so many different aspects to it. There are a lot of really great points they bring up countering things I said that I think would be fair to consider. The first thing, though, is let's talk about what is Nancy Pelosi doing here? Does she really want to implement this? Because I don't think we're at that point where it's necessarily going to work. Now, listen, Andrew Yang is a smart feller. I'm a big fan. He's got a ton of really, really smart policy positions. I was impressed. I went through his website. I don't play games. I don't like supporting people. I really don't, because you never know. They got like 10 positions. Yang had like 80 or 100, some ridiculous number of all of these things he's written down. I'm like, dude's basically written a manifesto talking about the things he supports. And so I looked through a lot of his policy positions and I found them to be fairly moderate and rational positions. Not all correct. He wanted like a news ombudsman. I don't think the government can do that. But, interesting ideas nonetheless. And so that's why I became a big fan of the guy, because I thought he was genuine and really wanted to solve problems. One of his proposals is a freedom dividend. Many of you probably already know this. The idea is that these big companies pay, there's a VAT tax placed on certain goods, and then through these big companies paying this tax or through the tax through their purchased goods, that funds the bulk of a $1,000 a month universal basic income, sort of. He calls it the freedom dividend. It's kind of different. Let's read this. On the campaign trail, Yang called it a freedom dividend, saying, "There's nothing stopping us from making it happen. There's nothing stopping a majority of citizens, of a democracy from passing ourselves a dividend. Companies do it all the time, every day, and when companies do it, what do we say? Great job, good management," Yang pointed out. "We are the owners of this country. We can return some of it to ourselves, and that's the only way we're going to get it back." Yang responded positively to Pelosi's comments. "I applaud Speaker Pelosi for publicly endorsing the consideration of a guaranteed income for all Americans. This pandemic has unfortunately exposed serious weaknesses in our economy, with alarming unemployment rates and crippling impact on every professional industry." So listen, right now, we are seeing a conflation of the Paycheck Protection Program and universal basic income. And that's one of the criticisms people had for me. I didn't mean to conflate them as the same thing. My point I was trying to make is you get a glimpse of some of the problems of universal basic income when you look at situations like this. And perhaps, look, I'm wrong on a lot of things. I'm absolutely willing to argue. Like, if you want to debate me and tell me that I'm not right about UBI, 100%. Totally would love to have a conversation about this. And all I want to do is do my best to get to the truth. You tell me something about UBI, okay, I'm not a big fan. I'm not completely opposed. I love the idea. This idea that every American gets enough money to pay for their housing, for their food, and for their healthcare. And after that, everything is the privilege, the premium. You earn, you build, you grow. I like the idea. I'd love to live in this world. I don't know if it's possible because we live in a scarcity society. Resources are not infinite. I don't like the idea of homeless people, but you got to understand, you can't just give a homeless person a check and then he go rents a building. It doesn't work that way. There are specific reasons why people don't have homes. There will always be poverty. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily discredit UBI outright, but it does mean that the idea of guaranteeing someone's basic, living conditions or dignity doesn't necessarily work. You will still have homeless people. You will still have lazy people. You will still have exploitation and all of that. Now, there is the argument that it will provide everybody with a set level of income. But one of the challenges I have for people is we need to talk about incentives, right? What will incentivize someone to actually work, to go out, to strive, to do better? Why would someone want to work a low-skill, boring, tedious job instead of using the opportunity to not have to work to go and do things that they think are more fun? Now, I get it. Andrew Yang is talking about automation. That's why I like the dude, okay? Because a blanket UBI is like, I think this idea of post-scarcity can only exist when you're post-scarcity, but you see communists try to implement things that don't make sense. And then when resources run dry, they collapse. Right now, there are a lot of jobs being erased. Like, do we really need someone working the register at a fast food restaurant when we're getting kiosks to replace them? We don't. So then what do we do to make sure that when these jobs are lost and nobody really wants to do them, people get support? One of the ideas is a kiosk task. A kiosk tax. There you go. The idea being that companies that employ kiosks will pay a premium. That tax will be used to pay for some kind of UBI. That, in concert with many other taxes, might actually be then distributed to people, and they will have access to food and stuff. I think it's fair to point out that big companies extract dollars very, very well. They make billions of dollars, they pay it out, and then their shareholders have all of this money to buy things with. But the money isn't the product. That's the problem. The value of the currency is relative to what you can buy for it. And if you get a bunch of people who are incentivized to do art instead of some kind of product creation or service, then you will have less to buy with your money. So let me do this. I think it's interesting that Pelosi's dancing around this idea. We'll see if it actually becomes popular. In this subreddit for Yang 2020, they mention that I was debating Joe Rogan, sort of debating. I guess we kind of were. I think we were having a discussion. I don't think I know all the answers. I hate the idea of debating, to be honest. Like, I'll have a discussion with you about it because I don't think I know all the answers. I'm not going to try and win. I'm going to ask you some questions and try and better understand your position. So the first comment was, Tim is conflating the Paycheck Protection Program plus universal income with universal basic income. I think that's what UI stands for. They are different programs. PPP seeks to tie you to your job, whether you like it or not. Universal income rewards you for getting fired with a pandemic structuring, assuming you can successfully apply. And UBI seeks to give you the freedom to live your life however you want, including the ability to tell bad employers to go F themselves, thus forcing them to either become good employers or go out of business. He also seems to think that people who have jobs won't get UBI, which is just fundamentally wrong, and that no one will work at undesirable jobs, even if they're offered decent pay, which is also wrong. All right, first, I understand people who get UBI, people who work will also get UBI, right? I totally understand that. I was talking about a world where some jobs are essential and most jobs are not. So I will point out, it's actually a really, really good point, something I didn't consider, that when people have an opportunity not to work, they will not want to work for you, and you will have to do more to be a better employer. I also think it's fair to point out, as a skateboarder, I know hundreds of people that would do anything in their power to never have to be productive at all. And this is where my perspective comes from on me thinking, me being a UBI skeptic. He says, no one will work at undesirable jobs, even if they're offered decent pay, which is also wrong. No, I do think people will work on undesirable jobs. I think companies that have them will have to dramatically increase the amount they pay to overcome the money you get from the government or from the freedom dividend or whatever it is. So I don't know if I have enough time to tackle this whole thing, but the point is, my skateboarder friends, my musician friends, would absolutely eat ramen every day if it meant they could just sit on the balcony playing their guitar and working on their art. They have no real plan for how to do the art better, how to make money off of it, or what they're going to do with it. But given the opportunity, they will leave their undesirable job. That means jobs like McDonald's, and I'm not saying it's necessarily undesirable, but low skill, will have to say to all of these people, we pay $2,000 a month for you to work here. Those people then say, I used to need the money for food and shelter and stuff. I don't anymore. I'd rather forego the luxuries and just smell the flowers. Hey, that's respectable. I totally agree. That's my mentality. I would rather get rid of everything tying me down and just smell the flowers. That means these companies will have to start paying more. They'll say, okay, some people want a new iPhone. Okay, how about $3,000? The problem is there's an exponential diminishing return on this. People consider, look, if I'm going to work 40 hours a week and only get another $2,000, what am I really going to do with that? right? Maybe I'll get a car, I guess. I don't know. I kind of live in a city. I got public transport. I'm kind of happy with what I'm doing. Listen, this is coming from a dude who slept on couches. I slept on couches. I worked jobs where I was getting like $300 a month, like these really crappy low tier jobs. I didn't need that much, so I did the least amount possible to focus on my thing. Now, granted, it worked for me because I was looking for a path, and I think there is a big benefit to UBI. But I think too many people don't have the right value system and would walk away. This would result in undesirable jobs jacking up the price, which causes the base cost for certain goods to go up around them, thus negating the value of the UBI itself. The purchasing power of the dollar would start to diminish dramatically unless the money we get through for the UBI comes from international sources. That would work much better. If we're talking about a tax on international sales, like if Amazon sells some kind of widget to Russia, Russia pays a tax, that tax goes to the American people, that might make more sense. But you will still be faced with the problem that the value of currency isn't necessarily based on someone just writing a number down. It's based on what you can get with that money. And if people have the option not to work and they choose to, you will not be able to buy as much. It's not about producing something or working at McDonald's. It's about being a plumber even. It's about doing a service. The prices will have to go up and it will diminish the buying power. Okay, but there is a really fascinating point that someone brought up near the bottom, I believe, saying that Tim Pool, in my estimation, doesn't see that UBI can be tweaked to fit his concerns. We want incentives. People will want to work. People will want to put their lives on the line. World of Warcraft and Magic the Gathering are going to be jobs. The currency that you earn in games like WoW already have value. It is going to be a matter of everyone playing fair. Amazing and excellent point I did not consider. I fully know the value of World of Warcraft currency, but you can't use it in real life. What if cryptocurrency is this path towards something we never expected? That what we consider hobbies actually can have some kind of value created? That's a really important possibility. I don't necessarily have the time or energy to break down right now, but I can point out that's something I hadn't considered and is a very, very smart point to be made. We'll see how things are played out. I gave you my concerns. I know I didn't go through all of the conversations. There's one, I think, pointless threads where people call me a fake liberal and a Trump supporter, which doesn't actually get to the point of arguing for or against UBI. I'll leave it with this. I like UBI. I like the idea. Let's figure out how to make it work, and you got me on board already. I see a bunch of problems that I don't see addressed. That's what we need to overcome. Because listen, I will absolutely 100% work with you on creating a system that would make UBI a thing. I don't see a path to building that structure. If you believe I'm wrong, talk to me about it, like these threads, which are awesome, by the way. And if I then agree with you and I can see the structure, I will do my best to figure out how we can support it better. At current, I lean negatively on UBI, thinking it's not entirely possible for the reasons I lay out, and many, many more. There are a lot of really good points to be made that weren't necessarily made. Joe, I think, made some really good points, but ultimately he did tell a story about a comedian, who had his life paid for and just didn't make it. I don't know how you overcome some of these fundamental issues. Maybe we can solve them, and maybe we can make a post-scarcity world where everyone gets access. But let me just end by saying one thing. There will never be a way to house everyone. There will never be a way to feed everyone. Perhaps if we come to a point where, listen, we have more than enough food for everyone in the world. It's a fact. But you got to understand when that people eat food, they have kids, and then there are more people. These are just weird realities that I don't know how you necessarily address without being callous or called inhuman or something. But the solution isn't just to give everyone food. It's to teach them to make their own food so they can support and sustain themselves. Giving money to someone doesn't create the food. We'll have to build a new system of economic trade, and that's possible, perhaps. I'm willing to have that conversation. But for now, I just don't see it. Though I think some great points were made. Let's keep the conversation going. To the Yang Gang subreddit, look, I'm a big fan of Yang, man. I was a early skeptic, became a convert. Still skeptical on UBI, but I think Yang's a great dude, and I think there's a lot of conversations we can have. So to the people who want to have this weird, F Tim and whatever, go ahead and do it, man. I'm trying to have a real conversation with people who might disagree with me, and I'd be willing to hear your input. I've gone over time. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save this segment for last, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m.